Hello. I forgot to give the dogs their treats, so I better do that first.
It'll keep them busy for a few minutes. They always get
Friday. We're doing our Friday check-in. How have you all been? I hope everybody is good. We're in the final frenzy of getting Sex with God ready to roll out. It goes live next Friday, 1 week from today, July 31st. Woo-hoo-hoo. So the last few steps of that process are always a little bit harried. It's a lot of fussy details, and that's what I've been working on. And the Kindle pre-order feature should be enabled shortly, so keep your eyes open for that. And yeah, so here we are.
So we put out there, if you had any questions, to send them to us, and I've got some questions for you, love. Let's see how this goes. I have to admit I was a little nervous when the topic was sex with God, what kind of questions would come in, but the questions are okay, so let's give this a shot. Are you ready?
Question is okay.
I know, I think you would answer anything.
I would try, or say I'm unwilling.
I'm writing a book called Sex with God. I think you'd be okay with it. So you ready? So I'll just fire away?
Let's go.
All right. Tell me about the title.
Dolce came up with the title. I was playing with different titles, I think, or I was really focusing a bit on the subtitle because that's where I can kind of expand on what the book is a little bit. But you came up with the title, so how did you come up with the title?
It just kind of made sense. It kind of summarized what the book is about to me. I mean, it's that whole core to three, bringing God into the picture and realizing that sex is good and God's okay with sex. God's more than okay. God created sex.
And God's involved in our sex.
Right. So. I'm a little nervous about what we hear about it, but
it did make a lot of sense.
It fits the book, I think.
It was perfect. She also found a beautiful image for the cover, which is just stunning. So,
all right. Here's another one. Why did you write Sex with God, and who is your target audience?
So I wrote it. All of my books seem like we books, because there's so much conversation and discussion, and I sometimes think that Dolce is more invested in them than I am, especially after they're out. But it seemed like the time was right. I think we've talked a little bit about this in other chats, that there's, creating a new sexual ethic, a new Christian sexual ethic seems to be needed and important in this era of deconstruction and kind of recovery from all the LGBTQI persecution. Although this book isn't about LGBTQI plus issues, it's about sex generally and affirming, God's design in all of it, regardless of who our beloveds are. So the time seemed right. We're all hungry to try to figure out how to move forward with some kind of a sexual ethic that makes sense and that's not puritanical. So, target audience. Anyone who's interested in figuring that out has kind of been struggling with it, I think. Not necessarily just Christians, but Christians would certainly be interested.
All right, so another question. Why did you choose the devotional format?
I love the devotional format. I think it's almost like little mini essays, and the thing about essays is that you have a central point that you build around in relatively short form. And I think that it's good to, sometimes we plunge into content and just plow our way through, and we don't have that much time to process it. And with a devotional format, people can go ahead and read it in larger chunks, but if they take it bite by bite, day by day, it kind of plants a seed for contemplation throughout the day so that God can speak to you more. Because, my words are just meant really to be a jumping off point where you can communicate with the Holy Spirit, and that's where the good work is done, is between you and the Holy Spirit speaking to you through your brain.
With me, devotionals always plant seeds, and then they get watered.
Yeah,
so I like the format. All right, why did you write the book now?
Oh, I probably already answered that one in what I previously said. The time is right. I mean, there's a lot of people are talking about sex and rejecting the purity culture problems and trying to figure out what that means as Christians moving forward. And sometimes I talked about the pendulum swing last week, where it seems like people go a little overboard. with anything goes. And I think, when we're focusing on centering our lives around God, anything can't go. There need to be some boundaries. So that's what I tried to probe.
So I keep looking down. I'm looking for questions, and if there's other questions, and making sure that terriers aren't eating furniture. So, so excuse me if I look like I'm looking down. I'm not paying attention.
She's just picking her fingernails. Don't
let
her.
Okay. Did you think that this book was going to upset people?
Things always upset people, and I think that there's a range of people who could be upset, and I don't remember if this is a question that you were going to ask about who it might upset, because it can upset the people who, from sort of the anything goes perspective. For example, there's a section on sex work, and right now there's a lot of advocacy for sex work. And I don't support it in this book. So there's probably going to be people in the audience who would not be happy about that. And then there's going to be evangelical, conservative Christians generally who wouldn't be happy about a lot of the other things I say. When I talk about how God sometimes works through infidelity, or, I affirm LGBTQI orientations and identities. So, it's an equal opportunity offender, and a lot of my books are kind of like that.
We just kind of go with it. It's where we are right now, and we'll be somewhere different 10 to 15 years from now, I hope. Another one I have for you is, what is the most controversial section in the book?
Oh, gee. It probably depends on what kind of offense you take, because I touched on that a minute ago. The sex work piece could be a little bit controversial. There's one on BDSM, which is bondage and discipline, sadomasochism. That one people could. I'm not even going to tell you what my stance is. You're going to have to read it. But people could take offense at that.
Can I give a clue? That was not a whip.
Oh, what?
That they heard in the background.
Right.
I even threw you.
At the other end, people. What was the question? You really threw me.
What was the most controversial section?
Oh, just the idea of inviting God into your sexual experiences, I think, can be very controversial for people. We've been, ever since, I'm sure it happened before Calvinism, but Calvinism, generally, the small amount I know about it, introduced this idea of depravity, and, there's a real shaming involved with our sexual beings. And so, that might be problematic for people too.
Well, I think it starts at the title. I think you have to be willing to walk through that, because there's some good stuff in there. And even the title, if you take the title, in my opinion, and you think about sex with God and what God thinks about sex and how we were created, that it's a good thing, and to get past those purity culture shaming, that we all have to deal with, I think. All right, I got another one here for you. Did any part of this book make you feel uncomfortable writing it, and will it make others?
It probably will make people uncomfortable. So the things that made me uncomfortable the most were when I had a hard time finding a mid-ground, the middle place, because I've mentioned before that I think that God is often in the middle. God is not something, a being who is binary. It doesn't exist out in the binaries. We have a God of the both and the also. So for a lot of topics, I was able to find that space, and for a few topics, I'm not going to say which ones. Once again, I had a harder time finding that place, and I think that's what made me most uncomfortable. None of the subject matter did. I'm pretty. Maybe it's because I'm asexual. I don't know, but I don't have a problem discussing sex as an objective thing. So that type of content didn't make me uncomfortable.
Okay. All right, let's see what we got. How long did it take you to write?
Oh, gee. Do you remember when I started on this one?
About 15 years.
Well, Theology of Desire was more that, yeah.
There was some of that in that blog. I think you've been kind of writing about this subject for many years, but this book, specific book, how long do you think? Gosh.
This probably about a year, less than a year maybe.
Yeah.
That's
That's what it seems like.
Yeah.
It seemed like you struggled a little bit in the middle. And I don't know if it was the
This one I had
topics or
trouble.
what.
I mean, stuff going on with life intruded too. And, you know, when you're working on a creative project, you have to be in a certain kind of headspace. So that disrupted things a bit. But, yeah, it took longer than I expected. I thought it was going to just roll out. But
hence, that's what 2020 has been all about, really.
Right.
All right, another question. How do you view sex? I'm going to listen to this one. I listened to all of them.
I think,
Go ahead.
you know, this again, if you read the book, you'll get a really good idea of how I view sex. I mean, I'm not sure why anyone cares what I think, other than you. You know, I think the whole premise of the book is what I think about God. I mean, about sex, not about God, but the two. I don't find them hugely separatable. I think every aspect of our life involves the divine and seeking the divine. So I think, you know, how I view sex, it's been very disruptive in my life, and it's been very healing in my life, depending on who and when I was at the time and who I was with. And, you know, I think that sex can be lovely and wonderful and help create unity and oneness, and I think that it can be very destructive. So I think sex is complicated. That's what I think.
Well, I think that's a good question, because I've been seeing, as we've been, you know, the PR for this book has been rolling out for a month or two now. And I've seen people suggest that there's no respect for God and there's no respect for sex, putting sex with God in a book.
Really?
So I've seen both ends of the spectrum, so I'm assuming people are going to know what, you know, is sex sacred to you? Is sex, you know, like we said, there's people on both ends of the spectrum that it's do it all the time, free love, and there's sacred sexuality, and you know. So I think that's probably what the question's about, because that's what I've been seeing in the PR part of it. So, all right, I have one last question to wrap this up, and someone wants to know if they can get signed copies.
Absolutely. Yeah, let us know, private message us. I don't think that there's a place for it on the Where to Love Is website yet. I'll have to get that added, because there is on that website you can order signed copies of books and anonymous copies of books, but that book is not up there yet. So, yes.
So I'm really proud of this book. I think
you
that
should be.
Suzanne has
They
really
contributed
put it out there.
profoundly.
You've really been very honest, and you've broached subjects that a lot of people don't talk about, don't write about. Once it's in paper, it's there forever, or, you know, out there in the world. And I'm really proud of you for pushing through that. But like you said, it's not something that seems to affect you in a way that you feel uncomfortable,
Right.
where some people would. So I think you're like perfect to write this book. It goes very well with your personality to be able to write this subject that people really need to talk about. I mean, I think one of the things in the beginning, one of the questions was, why did you write it at this time? And it seems like it's a really important time to talk about this to me. So the timing, I think, is perfect.
Well, you know, I was attending when the church that Dolce and I met in was a conservative, patriarchal, structured church. And way back then, in 2008 or so, I was suggesting to the Rector's Council that they talk and teach about sex, because even back then, I mean, I knew how important it was. So maybe you're right. Maybe I have been working on this.
Yeah, I think you
longer than I
have for a
thought.
very long time. You know, and one of the controversial things in the world in schooling now is that in sex education, LGBTQI is not brought into the subject matter. And in this book, there are several things that would help you discuss those things with your children, I think, even. So I think this book...
It's not a kid's book, though.
It's not a kid's book. We had to
Let's
click
be
the
clear.
not for kids on Amazon and everything, so we've had to make sure that everybody knew that. But it's, I think it's a good book for sharing with either your partner or reading by yourself. I mean, you've got masturbation in there, you've got asexuality, you've got so many subjects that some people might not know about. I mean, who you are, you kind of know about, but you don't know maybe who your partner is. And I think reading it together in a devotion style, I pray, will bless people and will grow their physical intimacy and their relationship with God.
Yeah, their overall intimacy.
Right. Well, I think that's 10 questions, and people can send us
That's a good
more.
number.
There weren't any that were that bad. You okay
No.
with that?
Next week, we're planning something for launch for next Friday. We don't know what it is yet, so stay tuned for that.
Well, it's good seeing everybody. We hope you have a really good weekend. We're excited. We've got some work to do around the house, and
Projects.
so you
Never
want to wrap
ending.
this up?
Yes, yeah, you guys take care, and you have our prayers. Seek joy and be love and do all those good things that God created you to do, okay? And we will talk to you again next week.
Bye-bye.
Take care.